Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. I asked a special friend of mine to come today to talk about the presidential campaign. Gordon Davis was a parks commissioner and president of Lincoln Center, but now he rides rail and road to support Barack Obama. I say that because you're always sending messages. You send pictures, you've been here, you've been there, right?
I have.
Welcome. How long have you been doing this, in this campaign?
I'm still back on rail and road, but we'll come back to rail and road. For me, it started in November of '06.
Yeah.
Because of, well, I'm originally from Chicago, and the same neighborhood where Senator Obama and his wife and kids live now. I literally grew up around the corner from where they live. And my brother still lives down the block from where they live. So I wanted Senator Obama to come speak at my law firm. And I called his office to try to arrange that in like October of '06. And his office said, well, the schedule for '07's a little unclear. Why don't you call back in January? So I said, oh, well, that's interesting. So I called my brother, who was a little closer to the scene. I said, what's going on? He said, he's thinking about running for president. I said, he is? He said, yep. And I said, well, that seems sort of like a fool's mission. And my brother said, oh, no, he'll be the next president of the United States. And I thought about that for 5 minutes and called back and said, what can I do to help? And that was, by then we were in November of '06, November, December '06. So that's when it began for me.
You know, we first heard about it in our household when Studs Terkel told Jimmy that there is a young man out here who's going to be president of the United States. And that was while he was still he was running for the Senate then.
Well, everybody in Chicago knew.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, I grew up in Hyde Park, Kenwood, which is right near the University of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. And when Senator Obama was first in Chicago working as a community organizer and other things, he got to know a lot of people in that area. And then he went to law school, same law school I went to. He was president of Law Review. I was not president of anything. I was just glad to get out. And but when you hear a story told, they always have some variation of he rejected Wall Street to work at a small civil rights law firm. That was my brother's law firm. Oh. His first job after law school was working in a firm by the name of Davis, Minor, and Barnhill. And Davis was my brother, Allison Davis, and Minor is Judd Minor, an old friend from high school, who I took the bar exam with in Illinois before I came to New York.
Did you pass?
I did. Judd didn't, but he did. He did eventually. So my first awareness of Barack Obama was probably the news story when he was elected president of the Harvard Law Review, but then more intimately when my brother mentioned that this young guy who had been president of the Law Review had come to work at his firm. And he tells wonderful stories about it. It's a firm that does what he's no longer with the firm, but he founded it with Judd. It does plaintiffs' civil rights litigation and housing development in low-income areas and so on and so forth. And there were about 5 or 6 partners in the firm, and Barack was there the first year associate, and partners would come into my brother's office and say, you know, he's just in there. He's not doing much law. He says he's writing a book. And my brother said, leave him alone. Let him write the book. So that's our story about the beginnings of the presidential campaign.
Did Michelle work there too?
No, she did not.
Okay.
Yeah. She worked in a large law firm before going to work in City Hall. Actually, it was Valerie Jarrett who she met with and who recruited her. Valerie Jarrett being one of Senator Obama's key advisors in the presidential race.
So you started then, what'd you do?
Well, that's, you know, the wonderful thing about this campaign, it's very much from the bottom up.
It's a totally do-it-yourself campaign, isn't it?
You know, you sort of decide what you're going to do,
yeah.
And then you know, here I am, a person whose brother knows, you know. I didn't start from the top down. I said, well, what can I do? And my brother said, well, why don't you raise some money from all those people you know in New York? And I said, he said that because I have some history in fundraising, mostly in the not-for-profit world.
The Lincoln Center Jazz.
Lincoln Center
You're
Jazz.
chair of the. Are you still chair of the board?
I am now officially the founding chairman of Jazz at Lincoln Center,
Great.
which means I was chairman from the time we began with Wynton Marsalis in, 88, 89, until January 2001. So they gave me a retirement title.
Oh.
But I'm still very much involved.
Right.
But a lot of fundraising associated with not-for-profits. I'd done some political fundraising for some campaigns that you will remember.
We should tell that we worked together in the Lindsay administration.
We did.
Yep, we did. When
You
we
were my babysitter. I was just a little young kid.
Not quite, but my daughter was your daughter's babysitter.
That is true. Your daughter was my daughter's babysitter. But I had raised money for the Jesse Jackson campaign back in 88, I guess. Was that when it was? And then for the Dinkins campaign. But nothing of any great notice or amount. And of course, I had got my start in New York working for the Lindsay administration, for John Lindsay, with you. And
You worked in the Koch administration, too.
well, I was the Parks Commissioner
Yeah.
under Ed Koch, but my jobs were not political
Right.
jobs. I was a staff member to Lindsay. I was on the City Planning Commission. I was a Parks Commissioner.
Let me just ask you a question.
you know.
When you raised money for Jesse Jackson, did you feel the same way raising money for Obama? Did you
No.
think Jesse Jackson could win?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point.
Right. No,
The
I
point
understand
was that
that.
Jesse Jackson had shown an ability to get votes in primary states that, as I think it was Iowa, where he showed he could draw white votes.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to me at the time it was an important effort, although to have his voice at the table, so to speak. And the New York primary, as you might remember, was quite raucous.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Koch had endorsed Al Gore,
Mm-hmm.
and Jesse was here, and but it was a sort of a toe in the water on political fundraising.
Well, a lot of us, I mean, and I'm sure you more than I felt it was a very important thing.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I felt it was.
I
It
mean-
wasn't just symbolic; it was a
Right.
real attempt. You know, like you, my life experience goes back to a series of events involving the Democratic Party, which are quite indelible. The '68 convention, the '64 convention. I'll never get Fannie Lou Hamer at the '64
Yeah.
convention with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
In fact, I have the recording of her testimony before the Credentials Committee, which you can get online,
Yeah.
which is still remarkably moving
Yeah.
to hear Fannie Lou Hamer in 1964,
Incredible.
the Democratic Convention in Atlantic City, talking about the Freedom Democratic. It's astounding. So to go from that to Barack Obama
Don't bang.
as a serious candidate for the presidency of the United States is quite a trip, and a very different experience than the Jesse Jackson experience, because, well, if for no other reason, that unbelievable primary
Yeah.
season. And I went I raised money. That's what I decided I could do best every day in New York. To modify somebody else's statement about New York, you know, people go to Switzerland for the Alps. They come to New York
For the
to
money.
raise political money.
Right.
That's where the money is, as Willie Sutton said.
Right.
That's why I go to New York.
It's a great problem, actually, for people who just want to do political work.
Yeah, well, I apparently have no shame. I'll ask anybody for money,
Including me.
including
That's all right.
my dog. I ask for money, and in the Obama campaign, it's never been about the amount. It's always been about the involvement of the individuals. It's money. Fundraising is a way of involving people. But at the same time, I went to South Carolina to work. I went to Pennsylvania to work. My family went to Ohio to work. I worked in New York at the most grassroots level, which is I showed up in the Orangeburg office of Obama during the South Carolina primary, and there was an office with nobody over 30, and I walk in, and there's this 67-year-old guy, and I say, well, I'm here to help. And they all go, what are we going to do with him? Well, you know.
What was the response like when you started doing that? I don't mean with the workers, I mean with people. Were you surprised at the response of voters?
Well, you see, in South Carolina, we were mostly calling and door-to-dooring and leafleting among the black population. So the response
Was
by
overwhelming.
the South, there was a period before Iowa and before New Hampshire when the African-American vote was evolving. It certainly
That's
wasn't.
right.
It wasn't a rush to Obama.
No.
There was deep loyalty to Hillary and to the Clintons, and Obama was an unknown. But clearly, when he won the Iowa caucus, that changed his perception among the African American community. Then, of course, Oprah came to South Carolina before I did, needless to say, and that completely changed the landscape in South Carolina. By the time Oprah left, there wasn't an African-American South Carolina who didn't know who Barack Obama was, what the stakes were. So when I arrived, most of the work was on those, working with a population where we knew that every vote you got out would be a vote for Barack Obama, and that was primarily in the Orangeburg area, the African-American vote. And it was very poignant because one of the saddest but forgotten chapters in the history of civil rights in this country is the Orangeburg Massacre, which took place at Orangeburg College. I've forgotten the year, but it involved a confrontation between a historically black college and its students and the town of Orangeburg that led to a confrontation over police brutality where the police opened fire, and it was an awful thing.
In the 60s, was this?
Yeah, this was, I think it was 68 or 69, and it's almost forgotten now, but it was a, you know, you sort of think of the civil rights period, the high point being the March on Washington. Then there were a series of really awful things that happened after that. Of course, the bombing of the Birmingham church and King's very unsuccessful poverty program in Washington, D.C., campaign. But Orangeburg was one of these terrible things that now have been forgotten, where there was young college students trying to redress grievances in the South Carolina that day, and where the cops opened fire. And so there's a memorial. One of the events I went to was a Get Out the Vote event at Orangeburg College, where they had speakers from Hillary and Barack and at that time Edwards and who else I don't remember, but right in the middle of the campus is this memorial.
So did you, when you went to Pennsylvania, did you also go to black neighborhoods?
Yeah, predominantly black neighborhoods. Of course, I'm African American, so the first thing I have to say is I'm African American.
I know, yeah.
Sometimes people don't know I'm African American until it's too late, but that's all right. So I did mostly, I worked in Philadelphia, and that was because I was sort of following one of the campaign's really wonderful organizers. Her name is Elizabeth Wilkins. And she's the daughter of an old friend, two old friends, Pat King, who's a professor at Georgetown, and who was the bridesmaid at my wedding to my wife Peggy, and Roger Wilkins, a political commentator, a former editorial writer for the Washington Post and for the New York Times, and was a key advisor, and a lovely person, and a key advisor in the Jesse Jackson campaign. Yeah. And lo and behold, their daughter Elizabeth, who went to Yale and then did some union work, has been in the trenches for Obama from the beginning. So when I went to South Carolina, I went to Orangeburg because that's where Elizabeth Wilkins was. And I went to Pennsylvania because that's where Elizabeth Wilkins was. And when I go to Michigan, that's because that's where Elizabeth,
where she is?
Yeah, that's where she is.
When are you going there?
Well, sometime in the next month and a half. You can't, you can stay in New York and you can go to very expensive fundraising parties, you can call people up and ask them to give you money, but there is nothing, as you know, like being in the street and talking to people face to face and one-on-one, and that's the way I've raised money, actually. A lot of the fundraising is around events, house parties, but most of my fundraising has been one-on-one, calling people up, emailing them, talking to them directly, which really was very exciting during the primaries because there was a real division in the Democratic supporters about that campaign.
You know, I mean, I've been an early supporter of Obama and want very much to see him win. But your talking about it has such a poignancy about it and a difference than I have. I was just thinking, you know, I mean, this is such a significant thing to African American population, right? In the world.
Well, it is, but it's, you know, it's like King said about the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about redeeming Black America,
No,
it was about
it's
redeeming white America.
Well, I was thinking of the difference because as a Jew, do I have the same pride in Mr. Lieberman? And I certainly don't.
Well,
so
but that's,
you know, that's petty.
that's
compared
different.
To, right.
You know, it's like when Barry Goldwater ran,
Yeah.
somebody said, you know, you always knew the first Jew to run for president would be an Episcopalian. So
Yeah,
we all go our separate paths, but so the campaign is not, my involvement is not, there is this intimate aspect of where I grew up and at the convention.
Mm-hmm.
I never got to hang out with the New York delegation because I constantly found myself hanging out with the people from Chicago.
Yeah.
And the
You didn't
people I
miss
grew
much,
up with.
I have to say.
Well, it's
I
not-
don't mean to say it that way, but
here,
all right.
around and involved with
Yeah.
the campaign from the very beginning
Yeah.
are all these people from the neighborhood I
it's
grew up
astonishing.
with. I mean,
It's
Valerie
incredible.
Jarrett is a wonderful example because her grandmother was my mother's best friend.
Mm.
And her parents, her father's from the faculty at the University of Chicago Medical School, have been best friends of our family. And so Valerie is now one of Obama's closest advisors, but the whole feel of the convention meeting was like that. People I'd known, not just now, but where there's a lineage in Chicago that we were all part of, in a sense. And so there's a poignancy to that. There is obviously a tremendous power to the idea of an African American running for president, for anybody who's African American.
Yes.
But the power is also because of what it says about white America and what the involvement of white, you know, it was Iowa
that started it.
that
huh?
made the difference. And they knew from the beginning that
Yeah.
Iowa was key. And Iowa is all about people
Yeah.
who are not African American
Right.
voting for an African American in a caucus context. So the campaign has this, there is a sense of mission and redemption about it. It is, of course, the realization of King's dream at a political level in this country. And so it has tremendous emotional power, yeah.
What do you think about other parts of the country and what they talk about as this blue-collar population that is assumed not to be able to bridge the gap of race? What does that mean? Is that
Well, I grew up
think
with parents who were social scientists. So before I go directly to race as an explanation of anything, I go to social class, and then the caste system. So my understanding of any slice of the voting population, blue collar, non-blue collar, black, whatever, you know, most of us vote the way our parents voted. So you start with that, and then you add on class, and then you add on race, and you come away in my point of view, you come away with an analysis that's not simply rooted in one factor, but a variety of factors. So we have experienced in the last week, culminating this week, in a cataclysmic economic and financial circumstances. But bottom line, it's going to be about people losing jobs. You know, when you cut through all of the Lehman Brothers and the AIGs and the Merrill Lynches, you know, people are going to lose jobs in New York. Thousands of people are going to lose jobs in New York. Not just the top investment banker, but the messenger and the programmer and the secretary, and then it will ripple out as the way things are
But
going.
that'll be later.
Well, you know,
And then the budgets, the
you know what this
institution.
has done is inject an element of fear
Yeah.
into this campaign,
Yeah.
or fear into this country,
Right.
economic fear, fear about security, made it even more, made it sharper and more difficult. And I think the person who wins this campaign will be the person who can capture that issue in a positive sense and provide leadership and hope. And I think that's going to be Barack Obama.
You sent out an email last week.
Well, as you know, I send them out all the time.
Emails.
It's become my...
Your whole thing. What does your law firm say?
Well, it's, you know, one of the advantages of being a partner in a law firm is you can
do what you...
Sometimes you can do what you want to do. Sometimes.
And they'll let you do it now.
Well...
But let me just... you sent out an email in response to someone who was very worried about what's happening in the Obama campaign, or to the Obama campaign, as far as the polls go, and
right.
And the
Palin effect. Oh
fear,
God, you know,
yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
And it was a great response. So tell us what you think is going to happen. Don't laugh.
My response was very simple. It said, you know,
a lot of
get
things
back
can
to
happen.
work.
Right.
You know, this is not. If you've been involved emotionally, as I have been for almost 2 years now, and everybody went to the campaign, you know there have been highs, there have been lows, there have been confusion, there's been uncertainty, there's been anger, there's been exhilaration.
And the changes
but
up and
if
down.
you want Barack Obama to be president, the one constant is get back to work. Because this is not over. It's not over today. It's going to be a close election. Under any circumstance, it's going to be close. And what will decide who's president of the United States, putting aside the issues, which hopefully will be what decides, the real issues, not the phony issues, will be registration
I was going to say that.
and turnout in the key battleground states. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, New Mexico, Colorado, Montana, you know.
And they're shifting gears a little bit in New York, because the emphasis had been on recruiting people to go to Pennsylvania and other states to help. But as of yesterday, they are back to registration. And the fascinating part about it, as you said, this is such a different campaign from the bottom up. But the website's very important to people.
Well, you know, I went to visit. This is great. One of the most interesting parts of the experience, I went to visit the Obama headquarters in Chicago, and I was out there for the July 4th weekend.
Yeah.
And it's 30,000 square feet, all on one floor in a big office building. Everybody is under 30, except for a few of the top people and the candidate. And then when you get to the new media section, they call it the new media section, there are about 50 people who are doing nothing but new media, the technology and the communication of webs and internet and blogs and all that sort of stuff. They're all under 20 as best I can tell. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at these people. But it has from the beginning been very much at the heart of the campaign, a new kind of communication with constituencies. And for me, you know, I'm Neanderthal compared to how this stuff works, but it's been very clear from the beginning. And when people began to realize it was when the first fundraising results came out after the first quarter of '07. And it turned out Obama had raised as much money as Hillary Clinton. And people said, how could that be? Well, how it could be was the ability to reach new people and new constituencies through this new virtual world.
So the website is...
Or as my daughter says, you still don't know what Facebook is? I said, no, but I'm trying to learn.
The website is ObamaForAmerica.com.
Obama for American.
And
but then it's deeply layered. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper.
So then across the top, they have all the different categories. And if you go to states, then you can come to, if you're living in the city where our viewers are, you can come to New York. And then you could even do it by your postal zone, right?
Can.
And then it's all the different things that are going on. And people, as you said, they start their own thing. The first time I did it was a subway stop at 72nd Street. The campaign actually called me and asked me if I'd go. I hate doing subway stops, 7:30 in the morning on a cold winter day. And I thought nobody would be there. And I get there, and there are about 10 young people just standing there holding an Obama poster.
Right.
And how did that happen? Somebody decided they were going to do that. So they posted. Subway stop, 72nd Broadway, such and such a date, 7:30 a.m., and you just go.
And there's another slice of it, which is the My Barack Obama part of it, where people create their own groups.
Right.
And the problem with this, of course, is all of a sudden you start getting emails, and they
All
go,
over,
they
there's
build
so
up.
many.
It's like Bartholomew
Right.
Cummins and the 1,000 whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it just keeps coming and coming.
People
So you
say,
have to regulate.
Take me
it.
off your list.
But it is a deeply sophisticated form of political communication that maybe John Dean began. I mean, not John Dean. Whatever.
Howard Dean.
Howard Dean began it. John Dean. Boy, am
That's a name.
I old? God.
Come on, you're not that old. I'm older than you.
Maybe
10 years
Maybe
older.
it began with Howard Dean, but the Obama, from the very beginning, that campaign understood it in ways that nobody's understood it before. There will be books written about this by political scientists, by social scientists, by historians, by all kinds of people trying to analyze how this campaign worked and why it's been so disciplined and why it's been able to be so coherent and at the same time, you know, fundraising in New York, in the beginning, you'd go to a fundraising event for Obama and you'd walk in the room and say, who are these people?
Yeah.
And you've never
It's
seen
all
any of them
different
before.
people.
You've never
Absolutely.
seen any of them before.
Absolutely.
All the usual ones,
They were
all the
also-
regulars were
with Hillary.
involved with Hillary,
Right.
understandably.
Yeah.
So who are these people? Where did they come from? It was, I mean,
it's
unbelievable.
It was a joyous sight,
Yeah,
actually.
it was.
So we've come to the end of this.
No.
Yes.
We just started.
I know.
I didn't get to talk about my daughter's involvement
you
and all the
can
people
come
working
back.
in Brooklyn.
Let's hope that your passion and everything is felt by other people, and we really do see something happen that's going to be thrilling.
No matter the outcome, there will be change.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.